She shot an arrow at him, but he caught it. Now tradition says she must marry him. Captain Marcus Reed gripped the manual controls of his escape pod with white knuckles as it plummeted through the atmosphere of the uncharted planet. The primary systems of the research vessel Pathfinder had catastrophically failed, forcing the crew to abandon ship. As chief of security, Marcus had stayed behind to ensure everyone else evacuated safely. "Come on, you piece of junk," he growled, wrestling with the stubborn controls. Warning lights flashed across the console, bathing his face in crimson. The pod's heat shields were failing, and the navigation system had gone completely dark. Through the viewport, he could see a vast expanse of purple-tinged forest and rocky terrain rushing up to meet him. The pod slammed into the planet's surface with bone-jarring force, skidding through alien vegetation before coming to rest in a small clearing. For several moments, Marcus remained still, taking inventory of his body. Nothing seemed broken, though his head throbbed, and he could feel warm blood trickling from a cut above his eye. "System status," he commanded, voice raspy from the smoke filling the cabin. "Life support critical. Communications offline. Navigation offline. Emergency beacon active." The pod's AI responded monotonously. At least the beacon was working. If anyone from the Pathfinder survived, they might be able to track his position. Until then, he needed to find water and shelter. The pod's door groaned in protest as he forced it open, letting in a rush of surprisingly breathable air. Marcus took a deep breath, grateful that at least he wouldn't need to rely on his suit's limited oxygen supply. The forest around him was unlike anything he'd seen before. Massive trees with iridescent purple-blue leaves towered overhead, while strange fern-like plants carpeted the ground. "Well, Reed," he muttered to himself as he stepped out, checking his survival pack. "You've really done it this time." After an hour of careful hiking, he came across a small stream cutting through the rocky terrain. The water was clear, and after testing it with his purifier, safe to drink. Marcus knelt by the stream, filling his canteen and splashing water on his face to clean away the dried blood. It was then that he heard it, a subtle displacement of air, the faint whistle of something moving very fast. Without conscious thought, his hand shot up, fingers closing around a slender shaft mere inches from his face. An arrow. Someone had just tried to kill him. Marcus stared at the arrow in his hand. Its shaft was made of a silvery material he didn't recognize, and the arrowhead gleamed with unnatural sharpness. His eyes narrowed as he scanned the tree line, finally spotting a figure partially concealed behind a massive trunk about 30 yards away. "I know you're there," he called out, rising slowly to his feet. "I'm not looking for trouble. My ship crashed, and I'm just trying to survive." For a long moment, there was silence. Then, with fluid grace, a figure stepped out from behind the tree. Marcus felt his breath catch in his throat. The being before him was unmistakably female, though clearly not human. Her skin was a luminescent blue-white, almost glowing in the dappled sunlight. Long silver hair cascaded down her back, framing a face of striking beauty. Her eyes, large and almond-shaped, were a vibrant violet that seemed to pierce right through him. She was tall, nearly his height, and clad in form-fitting armor that left little to the imagination. A quiver of arrows hung at her hip, and she held a bow of the same silvery material as the arrow he caught. But what struck Marcus most was her expression, a mixture of shock, disbelief, and what appeared to be horror. The alien woman said something in a language he couldn't understand, her melodic voice rising in what sounded like distress. She took a step backward, then another, shaking her head vehemently. "I don't understand," Marcus said, holding up his hands in what he hoped was a universal gesture of peace. "I'm not here to harm you or your people." The woman's eyes fixed on the arrow, still clutched in his hand. She pointed at it, then at him, saying something that sounded urgent and dismayed. When Marcus didn't respond, she repeated the gesture more emphatically, her distress clearly mounting. "The arrow?" Marcus asked, holding it up. "Look, I'm sorry I caught it, But you did shoot it at me." The alien woman's shoulders slumped in defeat. She closed her eyes briefly, then straightened, her face settling into a mask of resignation. With deliberate movements, she slung her bow across her back and approached him, stopping just a few feet away. Up close, her beauty was even more striking. Her features were delicate yet strong, with high cheekbones and full lips that were currently pressed into a thin line. She extended her hand, palm up, clearly asking for the return of her arrow. Marcus hesitated, then placed the arrow in her outstretched hand. "I'm Marcus," he said, tapping his chest. "Marcus Reed." "Elara," she replied, touching her own chest, her voice like chimes in a gentle breeze. Before Marcus could respond, she reached out and grasped his wrist. Her touch was cool against his skin, her grip surprisingly strong. With her other hand, she raised the arrow between them, pointing first to it, then to him, then to herself, before making a gesture that seemed to link them together. Marcus had no idea what she was trying to communicate, but he had a sinking feeling it was significant. Very significant. The journey to the Lunari settlement was silent and tense. Elara moved with predatory grace through the alien forest, occasionally glancing back to ensure Marcus followed. Despite her obvious reluctance, she guided him along barely visible paths that wound between massive tree trunks and over rocky outcroppings. After nearly an hour of walking, the forest began to thin, and Marcus caught glimpses of structures ahead. Dwellings built into and around enormous trees, connected by graceful bridges and platforms that blended seamlessly with the natural environment. As they approached, figures emerged from the settlement, all female, all with the same luminescent blue-white skin and silver hair as Elara, though none quite matched her striking beauty. They wore similar armor in varying designs, and all carried weapons, bows, spears, or curved blades that gleamed in the dappled sunlight. The women formed a loose circle around them, murmuring among themselves in their melodic language. Their expressions ranged from curiosity to outright hostility, with many staring at Marcus as though he were some dangerous beast. Elara spoke, her voice clear and commanding. She gestured to Marcus, then to the arrow she still held, and finally made that same linking motion she'd shown him by the stream. The reaction was immediate, gasps and widened eyes in a flurry of excited conversation. An older woman stepped forward. Her hair was more silver than white, and her face bore the subtle lines of age. Though she remained strikingly beautiful, she wore more elaborate armor than the others, with intricate patterns etched into the blue-white material and a cloak of shimmering fabric draped over her shoulders. "Elder Telia," Elara said, inclining her head respectfully. At least, that's what Marcus assumed she said, recognizing the respectful tone and posture. The elder studied Marcus with penetrating violet eyes, then turned to Elara and spoke at length, her tone questioning. Elara responded, occasionally pointing to Marcus or the arrow, her voice becoming increasingly defensive. Finally, the elder approached Marcus directly. She reached out, placing cool fingers on his temples, and closed her eyes in concentration. A strange tingling sensation spread through his head, not unpleasant, but definitely alien. When she stepped back, she spoke again, but this time, to Marcus's astonishment, he understood her words. "I am Elder Talia of the Lunari. I have established a temporary neural link so that we may communicate. It will fade by tomorrow's dawn." Marcus blinked in surprise. "Thank you," he managed. "I'm Captain Marcus Reed of the Earth Alliance research vessel Pathfinder." The elder nodded. "Elara tells me you caught her arrow in mid-flight. Is this true?" "Yes," Marcus replied cautiously. "It was instinct. I didn't mean any offense." A murmur ran through the gathered women. Elder Telia raised a hand for silence. "No offense is taken, Captain, but you must understand the significance of what has occurred." She gestured to Elara, who stood rigidly at her side. "Elara is our chief huntress. For a warrior to catch her arrow is no small feat. According to our most sacred traditions, dating back to the dawn of our civilization, Such an act forms an unbreakable bond. Marcus frowned. What kind of bond? A mating bond, the elder replied simply. By catching her arrow, you have proven yourself her equal in skill and reflexes. Our traditions dictate that you are now bound to enter a union. Marcus stared at her, certain he had misunderstood. A mating bond? You mean marriage? That is your term, yes. Elder Tullia's expression remained impassive. The tradition is absolute. It ensures that our people remain strong, that only the most worthy genes are passed to the next generation. Now Marcus understood Alora's horror when he caught the arrow. She hadn't expected an off-worlder to possess such reflexes. With all due respect, he began carefully, I'm not one of your people. Surely your traditions don't apply to. The traditions apply to all. Elder Tellia interrupted firmly. They are sacred and absolute. To break them would bring dishonor to Alara and her lineage for generations to come. Marcus glanced at Alara, who was staring fixedly at the ground, her posture rigid with tension. He felt a pang of sympathy for her. Clearly, she wanted this situation even less than he did. What if I refuse? He asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. The elder's eyes hardened. Then you would be declaring Alara unworthy, a grave insult that could only be answered with blood. Her family would be honor-bound to seek retribution. Great. So his options were forced marriage or a blood feud with an entire clan of warrior women. Before Marcus could respond, a commotion at the edge of the gathering drew everyone's attention. A tall, muscular male Lumeri strode forward, his blue-white skin darker than the female's, almost cerulean. Unlike what Marcus had expected from a matriarchal society, this male was imposing, broad-shouldered and fierce-looking, with elaborate armor and multiple weapons. Corin, Alara whispered, speaking directly to Marcus for the first time since they'd arrived at the settlement. War chief of the Dawn clan. Corin stopped before Elder Tellia, performing a formal bow that did nothing to hide the anger radiating from him. Honored elder, he said, his voice deep and resonant. What is this I hear about an off-worlder claiming the sacred bond with Chief Huntress Alara? Elder Tellia regarded him coolly. The rumors are true, War Chief. This human caught Alara's arrow fairly. Impossible. Corin's violet eyes flashed dangerously. No outsider could possess such skill. This is clearly a deception. Many witnessed it, the elder replied calmly. And the arrow bears the mark of his touch. Corin's gaze shifted to Marcus, naked hostility in his eyes. Alara was to be mine. We have been negotiating an alliance between our clans for many seasons. Ah, Marcus thought. Now we get to the heart of it. Nothing was finalized, Elder Talia said firmly. And the arrow-catching bond supersedes all negotiations. You know this, Corin. The war chief's jaw clenched visibly. Then I invoke the right of challenge, as is my privilege when an outsider claims a bond with a high-ranking Lunari. Elder Talia sighed, looking suddenly tired. That is indeed your right, she acknowledged. Do you accept the consequences if you fail? I do, Corin said without hesitation. The elder turned to Marcus. Captain Reed, War Chief Corin has invoked the right of challenge. According to our traditions, he may contest your claim to the bond with Alara through ritual combat. Marcus kept his expression neutral. And if I refuse? The bond would be nullified. Elder Talia explained. But you would be declared unworthy and banished from our territory. Given the predators that roam the outer forests, that would likely mean your death. Perfect. Another no-win situation. And if I accept and win, then your bond with Alara would be confirmed beyond any further challenge, and you would be granted full status within our society. Marcus glanced at Alara, who was still staring at the ground, her face unreadable. And what does Alara want? He asked quietly. A ripple of surprise went through the gathering. Even Elder Tellia looked taken aback by the question. The chief huntress's desires are not relevant to the tradition, Corin said dismissively. The arrow bond, and the right of challenge are sacred. Marcus nodded slowly. I accept the challenge. Corin smiled coldly. The challenge will take place tomorrow at midday, he declared. 3 trials of skill, strength, and cunning. Prepare yourself, human, for you face a warrior born and trained in the ancient ways of the Lunari. The morning dawned clear and bright, sunlight filtering through the canopy to dapple the forest floor with golden patches. Marcus woke feeling surprisingly refreshed after a night in the visitor's dwelling, a simple but comfortable structure built into the hollow of a massive tree trunk. He performed a series of stretches and exercises to loosen his muscles and focus his mind, a routine that had served him well through years of Earth Alliance service. As he completed his warm-up, a soft knock came at the door. Enter, Marcus called. The door opened to reveal Elara. She looked different today, less hostile, though still guarded. The trials will begin soon, she said. I thought you might need these. She held out a bundle wrapped in leaves. Inside, Marcus found a curved dagger with a handle of polished bone and a small container of blue paste. The dagger is balanced for a human hand, she explained, and the paste will help if you're injured. Marcus studied her carefully. Why are you helping me? Elara's violet eyes met his directly for the first time. Corin is cruel. He seeks to use our union to gain power and push for even stricter divisions between our clans. She paused. And you asked what I wanted. No Lunari male would ever consider such a question. Before Marcus could respond, drums began to sound from the center of the settlement. It's time, Elara said. The first trial awaits. The trials were to be held in a large clearing where hundreds of Lunari had gathered. Wooden platforms had been erected for spectators, and a central area was marked off with glowing stones. Corin was already there, performing an elaborate warm-up routine with various weapons. He paused when Marcus entered, his eyes narrowing with contempt. Elder Telia stood on a raised platform, her silver hair gleaming in the sunlight. Today we witness the challenge of right, she announced. 3 trials will determine the outcome: skill, strength, and cunning. The victor will claim the bond with Chief Huntress Elara. The first trial was archery, a test of skill. 3 targets had been set up at increasing distances, the furthest partially obscured by hanging vines and moving unpredictably in the breeze. Corin went first, his form perfect as he sent 3 arrows in quick succession toward the targets. The first 2 struck near the center, while the third grazed the edge of the moving target. Marcus took his position next. He had trained with various weapons during his Earth Alliance service, including traditional bows during survival courses. He knocked the first arrow, drew the string back to his cheek, and focused on the target. Exhaling slowly, he released. The arrow flew true, striking just inside Corin's mark. The second target proved more challenging, but Marcus managed to equal Corin's shot. For the final target, Marcus studied the swinging object's pattern, noting a moment of relative stability in its rotation. He timed his release perfectly, and the arrow struck dead center. A murmur of appreciation ran through the crowd. Corin's face darkened with anger. The second trial tested strength and endurance. The competitors were required to carry heavy stone blocks up a steep hill to build a small tower. The first to complete the tower would win. Corin's superior strength showed immediately as he hefted the stones with ease, but Marcus noticed the Lunari was expending too much energy too quickly. Drawing on his military training, Marcus paced himself, maintaining a steady rhythm. As the trial progressed, Corin began to slow, his movements becoming labored. Marcus, meanwhile, continued his methodical approach. In the final moments, as both men placed their last stones, Marcus's disciplined technique proved decisive. His tower was completed mere seconds before Corin's, earning him the second victory. The final trial was cunning. A maze had been constructed in the forest, filled with traps and challenges. The goal was to reach the center and retrieve a crystal sphere. As Marcus navigated the maze, he encountered tripwires, pitfalls, and mechanical traps. His security training proved invaluable as he methodically identified and bypassed each obstacle. At one point, he heard Corin crashing through a different section of the maze, followed by a cry of pain. The war chief had triggered a trap. The center of the maze contained a final challenge. The crystal sphere was suspended over a pool of bubbling liquid that Marcus suspected was caustic. 3 ropes hung from above, each leading to a different mechanism. Marcus studied the setup carefully, noting the tension in each rope and the alignment of the mechanisms. While 2 ropes would clearly trigger traps, the third seemed to operate a simple pulley system. But that was too obvious. Thinking laterally, Marcus removed the dagger Elara had given him and cut a small section from one of the trap ropes. He tied it to his belt to create a makeshift lasso, which he used to snare the sphere directly, bypassing the intended mechanisms entirely. As he emerged from the maze, sphere in hand, the Lunari crowd erupted in a mixture of shock and admiration. Human adaptability had triumphed over traditional approaches. Corin exited the maze moments later, his armor damaged and his pride clearly wounded. "This proves nothing," he shouted. "The human used trickery." The trial was cunning, Elder Talia reminded him sternly. Captain Reed demonstrated exactly that. With all 3 trials complete, Marcus stood victorious, an outcome few had expected. The human outsider had bested one of the Lunari's greatest warriors, changing everything. The celebration feast following Marcus's victory was a subdued affair. While many Lunari seemed impressed by his performance in the trials, others clearly shared Corin's displeasure at the outcome. The war chief himself was notably absent, having stormed away after Elder Talia officially declared Marcus the victor. Marcus sat at the high table beside Elara, who had remained mostly silent throughout the feast. The neural link Elder Talia had established was still functioning, allowing him to understand the conversations around him, many of which concerned his unexpected triumph. "The off-worlder moves like water," one huntress remarked nearby. "Adaptable, flowing around obstacles rather than confronting them directly." "It is not the Lunari way," another replied dismissively. "Perhaps that is why he succeeded," a third countered. Elder Talia, seated on Marcus's other side, leaned toward him. "You have surprised many today, Captain Reed. Few believed an outsider could match one of our warriors, let alone defeat Corin in all 3 trials." "I found that being underestimated can be an advantage," Marcus replied, taking a sip from his cup. The drink was sweet with an underlying tang that reminded him of honey and citrus. Indeed, the elder studied him with those penetrating violet eyes. "Yet I sense you take no pleasure in this victory." Marcus glanced at Elara, who was pushing food around her plate without eating. "I'm not in the habit of forcing anyone into a situation they don't want," he said quietly. "On my world, bonds are formed by mutual choice, not ancient traditions or combat victories." Elder Talia followed his gaze to Elara. "Our ways have preserved our society for millennia, Captain. The arrow bond has produced strong offspring and maintained peace between clans." "At what cost?" Marcus asked. "The happiness of individuals like Elara." The elder's expression softened slightly. "You continue to surprise me. Most males, even among our own people, would not concern themselves with such matters." Before Marcus could respond, a commotion erupted at the entrance to the feasting area. Several Lunari guards burst in, weapons drawn, with a badly injured female warrior supported between them. "Elder," one called out urgently, "the Dawn clan attacks. Corin has rallied his warriors and seized the sacred temple." The gathering erupted in chaos. Elder Talia rose quickly, her voice cutting through the noise. "Secure the perimeter. All huntresses to their defensive positions." Elara was immediately on her feet, all traces of reluctance gone as she barked orders to nearby warriors. She turned to Marcus, her violet eyes blazing with newfound intensity. "The temple contains our oldest artifacts and the records of our traditions," she explained rapidly. "If Corin destroys them, he can claim the old ways are lost and impose his own interpretations." Marcus understood immediately. A cultural coup. Elara nodded. "He means to rewrite our history, to strengthen male authority, and weaken the bonds between clans. What can I do? Marcus asked, rising to stand beside her. For the first time, a hint of a smile touched Allura's lips. You caught my arrow, off-worlder. Now prove it wasn't mere luck. Together, they rushed from the feast hall. Outside, the settlement was mobilizing for defense, huntresses arming themselves, younger females, and the few males Marcus had seen being ushered to secure locations. Allura led Marcus through hidden paths toward the temple, a massive structure carved into the side of a cliff face that overlooked the settlement. As they approached, they could see Corin's warriors stationed around the entrance, while smoke billowed from within. He's burning the records, Allura whispered, her voice tight with anger. We must stop him. Marcus surveyed the situation with a tactical eye. We need a diversion. Using skills honed through years of security operations, Marcus and Allura coordinated a two-pronged approach. While Allura's loyal huntresses created a distraction at the main entrance, Marcus led a small team through a hidden passage Allura had revealed, one known only to the chief huntresses throughout generations. Inside the temple, they found Corin and his closest allies gathering ancient scrolls and artifacts, preparing to destroy them in a large ceremonial fire. The war chief's back was to them as he addressed his followers. With these records gone, we will restore the natural order, he proclaimed. Males leading, females serving, as it was in the true ancient days before the great distortion of our history. You mean before your attempted distortion, Marcus called out, stepping from the shadows with his Earth Alliance pulse pistol drawn. Allura and her warriors flanked him, bows at the ready. Corin whirled, rage contorting his features. You. This doesn't concern you, human. Actually, it does, Marcus replied calmly. According to your traditions, I won the challenge fairly. That makes me Allura's bonded and a member of the Lunari Society. False traditions, corrupted by generations of female rule. Corin spat. Marcus shook his head. I've seen this before. Someone using tradition when it suits them and discarding it when it doesn't. You don't care about the old ways. You only care about power. With a roar of fury, Corin charged, drawing his ceremonial blade. Marcus sidestepped, using the war chief's momentum against him, and delivered a precise strike that sent Corin sprawling. The pulse pistol would have been more effective, but Marcus wanted to defeat Corin on his own terms. The battle was brief but intense. Corin was strong and skilled, but his rage made him predictable. Marcus remained calm, analyzing patterns and exploiting openings, the same approach that had won him the trials. When it was over, Corin lay defeated, his own blade at his throat. Kill me then, he growled. Finish it. Marcus glanced at Allura, and in that moment, a silent understanding passed between them. No, Marcus said, stepping back. That's not how we'll begin our new tradition. In the aftermath, as Corin and his co-conspirators were taken into custody, Marcus and Allura stood alone in the temple, surveying the ancient records that had nearly been lost. What did you mean by new tradition? Allura asked quietly. Marcus turned to her. On Earth, we have a saying. Tradition should serve the people, not the other way around. What if the arrow bond became a symbol of partnership rather than ownership? Of mutual respect rather than obligation? Allura studied him with new interest. You would change our ways so fundamentally. Not change, Marcus clarified. Evolve. Adapt. Like I did in the trials. He hesitated, then added, and I think that should start with us. I won't hold you to a bond you don't want. For a long moment, Allura was silent. Then she reached for her quiver and drew out a single arrow, the same one Marcus had caught by the stream. She held it between them. In the oldest records, before the traditions became rigid, the arrow bond was indeed about partnership, she said softly. Two warriors, equals in all things, choosing to face life's battles side by side. She offered the arrow to Marcus. I would know more of this human who catches arrows and speaks of choice. Perhaps We could start there. Marcus accepted the arrow, a smile spreading across his face. I'd like that. Outside, the 3 moons of the alien world rose over the forest, casting their light on a civilization standing at the threshold of change. All because a human had caught an arrow in midair.